Hey everyone, welcome back. I hope you're doing well. Today I want to talk about something that's going to affect a lot of us pretty soon, and honestly, it is one of those things that can sneak up on you if you're not paying attention. The new Real ID deadline is coming up on May 7th, 2025, and there's a lot of confusion out there about what it actually means for everyday things like traveling, visiting government offices, and yes, even going to Social Security. You might be thinking, wait, do I need this new Real ID just to handle my Social Security stuff? It is a really good question, and it turns out the answer is a little more interesting than you might expect. Plus, there's something a lot of people do not realize about how this change could ripple into our everyday lives. So, stay tuned because understanding this could save you from a lot of unnecessary stress later on. And before we keep going, let me know in the comments, have you already gotten your Real ID or are you still waiting? I would love to hear how it went for you, and your experience can really help others too. And also, if you like having these clear and down-to-earth updates, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you do not miss anything. Now, let's step back for a second. What even is the Real ID, and why is it suddenly such a big deal? Well, the Real ID Act was actually passed way back in 2005 after the 9/11 attacks. It was created to tighten up how IDs like driver's licenses are made, to make them more secure and harder to fake. You see, after September 11th, they found that the terrorists were able to get multiple state IDs pretty easily, so the government wanted to close those loopholes. Real ID sets a federal standard for how states issue IDs, which means stricter identity checks and better security features built into your license. Even though it passed in 2005, states have pushed back for years. Some said it was too expensive. Some said it was a privacy issue. Some just did not want the federal government telling them what to do. And then, of course, the pandemic delayed things even more. But now, with President Trump back in office, the government has made it very clear that May 7th, 2025 is the final deadline. No more extensions, no more grace periods. So, what happens after May 7th? Starting then, if you want to board a domestic flight or enter certain secure federal buildings, you'll need a Real ID-compliant license or another approved form of ID like a passport. And just to make it super clear, a regular old driver's license, if it is not Real ID compliant, will not be enough to get you through TSA at the airport anymore. You might be wondering, how do you even know if your license is Real ID compliant? Well, most states put a little star in the corner of the ID. Some states, like California, use a golden bear with a white star inside it. If you see that star, you're good to go. If you do not see it, your ID probably is not Real ID compliant, and you would need an upgrade if you plan to fly or visit certain federal facilities. And speaking of states, not all of them are at the same place with this rollout. Some states like Colorado, Florida, Maryland, and Georgia are almost fully compliant. They have been really aggressive about getting their residents switched over, but others are way behind. New Jersey, for example, only has about 17% of its residents Real ID compliant right now. Pennsylvania, Washington, Maine, they're also struggling. So depending on where you live, it might be super easy to get your Real ID, or it might be a frustrating process with long lines and few appointments. And now, here's the part that a lot of people are asking, and maybe you are too. Do you need a Real ID to visit your Social Security office? Maybe you need to update your benefits, or apply for a new card, or change your direct deposit information. Will you be turned away if you show up without a Real ID? Well, the answer so far is no, you do not need a Real ID to go to a Social Security office. You do need a valid photo ID though. That could be your regular driver's license, even if it is not a Real ID, or a US passport, or a state-issued non-driver ID. So you are still totally fine handling Social Security business, even if you have not gotten your Real ID yet. But make sure your ID is up to date and not expired, because you will need to show something official for identity verification. Now, that said, even though you do not technically need a Real ID for Social Security, there's still good reasons you might want to get one sooner rather than later. For starters, if you travel even a little bit, holidays, family visits, business trips, having a Real ID will make your life much easier at the airport. Sure, you could carry your passport around for domestic flights, but passports are expensive, they're bulky, and if you lose it, replacing it is a big headache. A driver's license is much easier to manage. Also, if you're someone who likes to stay prepared, upgrading to a real ID now saves you from scrambling at the last minute. Think about it. If your license expires next year anyway, why not upgrade to a real ID when you renew? Another thing to consider is that not all states let you do this process online. Some states let you start the application online, but most still require an in-person visit for the final paperwork and verification. And even then, the real ID is not issued instantly. They usually mail it to you a few weeks later, and you get a temporary paper license in the meantime. But here's the kicker: that temporary paper is not enough to fly with. You have to wait until your official real ID arrives in the mail. Now, thinking bigger picture for a moment, the real ID is not just about airport security. Experts say it is a stepping stone toward even more advanced forms of ID in the future. Digital IDs, biometrics like fingerprints or face scans, blockchain systems to manage your identity securely online. All that stuff is coming down the pipeline. Real ID is basically the first building block. So then, if you're someone who wants to stay ahead of the curve and avoid future headaches, getting your real ID now might be a smart move. It is about preparing for the way things are moving, not just reacting to deadlines when they show up. And hey, if you're worried about privacy, you're not alone. A lot of people have raised concerns about how much information states collect when issuing a real ID. The good news is your personal information stays with your state DMV, not in some big federal database. Still, it is always smart to ask questions and stay informed, because understanding how your data is used is just as important as having the right documents. Let's quickly run through what you need if you decide to get your real ID. Generally, you will need to bring in proof of your full legal name, like a birth certificate or passport, proof of your social security number, like a social security card or a W-2, and 2 documents showing your current address, like a utility bill and a lease agreement or bank statement. Every state's process is a little different, so double-check your local DMV website before you go in, just to be safe. And now, circling back, if you're only concerned about visiting your local Social Security office, breathe easy. A standard, valid ID will still be accepted. You do not have to have a real ID to get in, apply for benefits, or make changes to your account. But if there is any chance you will be flying or visiting other federal facilities after May 7th, 2025, it is definitely worth considering getting your real ID now. If you made it this far, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope this cleared up some confusion and helped you feel a little more prepared. Let me know down in the comments, are you planning to get your real ID soon, or are you holding off? I would love to hear where you are at with this. And also, if you found this helpful, make sure to hit that subscribe button so we can keep navigating these everyday life changes together. Take care, and I will see you next time.